Welcome to Houston Sports Talk with your host, Robert Land.
Postgame Show, Robert Land, along with my co-host, Sports Radio 610's Shaun Bijani. And if you're new to the party, 45 years in journalism between the two of us, 35 years covering Houston sports. You guys are in great hands. And Shaun, you can't say the Texans aren't consistent. You can set your clock each week for the fourth quarter fold. It's always there for you.
It's not even a fourth quarter fold. I'm really kind of tired of hearing the word finish on the weekly and on the broadcast in particular, because the Texans aren't even doing the things to put themselves in position to finish. Like when you talk about finishing games, you're talking about continuing to play good, solid defense in the game's waning moments, or being able to sustain a drive in the game's waning moments. Like the Texans need too many things to go correctly way before that. The word finish, I know we're going to hear it again, and I'm going to want to just scoop Lovey's eyeballs out, or at least my own, when I hear that on Monday. But, it is what it is.
Oh, my goodness. There's a lot I want to talk about in the fourth quarter, but we got a lot to talk about in the rest of the game. We're going to go through possession by possession, but we want to hear from you. You're out there. Give us a comment, a question. We're going to react as this thing moves along. We do it every Sunday, the Texans post game, or whenever the Texans play. Make sure to subscribe to us on YouTube as well. That's a great way to support the show. And let's start off with the Texans' first possession, Shaun. And after the great touchdown drive last week, they got back to their usual 3 and out on 3rd and 12. The Giants blitzed. Mills had man coverage everywhere, didn't read it quickly enough. I also noticed not one of his receivers seemed to read it. Nobody was looking back for the football when they had about 7 guys that were right next to the line of scrimmage and looking like they were ready to charge Davis Mills at that point. Yeah.
We asked coaches, players numerous times this week about the Giants pressure. And it's almost like on that possession, to come out of the game like that, they just anticipated having all the time in the world. Never mind the Giants, blitzing more than any team has in the last 2 years, and the 4th most of any team in the NFL the last 7 years at a 43% clip. It looked like they thought they were going to have all the time in the world today, especially on that possession.
Giants' first possession, they walk it down the field. The touchdown pass to Cager. He takes advantage of a Texans defense that looked unprepared for a quick snap. And Shaun, this goes back to my frustration with the Texans offense. They never rush up to the line and snap the ball quickly or change their pace at all. Not only is that terrible for your offense, but if you don't practice it, which it appears as though the Texans don't practice it by the way they play, how are the Texans defense ever supposed to be prepared for something like this on game day?
It's a good point. I think that probably has more to do with handling your offense with kid gloves if you're Pep Hamilton and Lovie Smith, because if they felt like they could do it, they would do it. And I just don't think they trust guys, mentally enough to be able to do that. So your defense is probably going to suffer. I mean, the only experience you're going to get out of that is, against the scout team or on a week in and week out basis when you're actually on the field against your opponent. It's something that does hurt because tempo in this game, it's always been a thinking man's game, but it is a fast game this day and age. And if you're not doing the things to kind of stay up to date, stay with the flow, then you're doing it wrong. You're playing, you're coaching, you're preparing for losing football.
Yeah, this goes back to Bill O'Brien era football. And this goes back to Gary Kubiak, where the Texans never rush on offense and change their tempo at all. And it's amazing, Shaun, because we brought everything over from the Patriots except that, because that's one of the things that Tom Brady, back when he was there, would do all the time. And it would kill the Texans at the goal line because the Texans weren't prepared. Guys were out of position. I'm going to get back to the tempo thing, but I mean, I know you agree with me. I'm going to move on to the Texans' next possession because it's a 3 and out. But on 3rd and 5, Mills throws to Nico, who was back this week, and it was good to see him. I thought that was pass interference, Shaun. The corner Moreau grabbed Nico with the pass in the air. The refs looking right at it. I don't know what the deal was with that.
I agree with you. I made a note here. Collins very well could have and should have drawn that flag for a pass interference. Moreau was on coverage on that. However, it was a crap ball to begin with. I just didn't think it was a well-placed football. And you can't play to the flag, just like in baseball. You can't pitch to the umpire. I use that analogy quite a bit. It was, the more and more I think about it and replay that particular play in my mind, it was much more egregious now than I did believe at the time when it actually had happened. I guess I was just kind of equally as disgusted with the attempted pass by Mills as I was the no flag by the referee in that instance.
I thought it was a catchable pass, though, if Nico has a shot at it, and Nico needs to act a little bit there. Sometimes you got to do a little thespian stuff, but the Texans D gets a 3-and-out after that. Cashman with a nice play on third down, tackling Daniel Jones in the open field. The Texans offense, their third straight 3-and-out, and on third and long, you knew they'd give Mills that safe screen pass, not likely to go anywhere, which ended up going to Philip Dorsett. They're like clockwork. It's just, I don't know. But anyway, the Giants drive the ball inside Texans territory, but on 4th and 1, the Giants false start, so the Texans get a good break there. And finally, the Texans offense gets it going, Shaun, thanks to Dameon Pierce, of course. But the Texans get a field goal. Once again, though, I am not happy with Pep's play calling. Pierce breaks off that huge run to the 19. The Giants defense is now tired. And this is what I'm talking about, which is being able to do things with, a little heads up. And, I'm not going to pretend like Davis Mills, this is his third game anymore. This is something that Davis Mills and Pep Hamilton both have been around the NFL long enough to know, hey, the defense is tired. So what do you call there? He calls a swing pass to Cooks, which is pretty much exactly what you want if you're the Giants defense, because your defense is tired and quick screens, pretty easy to defend in a short field.
Yeah, and I can't say that I was surprised by the play call there, just because I'd noticed the Texans working that same pass with Cooks a couple of times this week that we were allowed to, watch practice. And, you kind of anticipated that, just given the fact that, okay, the Texans know the Giants are going to blitz a lot, whether it be obvious passing situations or not. The Giants, why they've been so successful in getting to the quarterback and creating, careless throws and, have caught offenses off guard, is because they will bring an extra man, even in non-obvious passing situations. But, that play call there, that does bother me, after the fact in hindsight. But when you start a drive with 3 consecutive Pierce runs and you break a 40-yard or whatever it was, and you get that juice, they played Dario Ogunbowale a couple of times today, it looked like, to spell Pierce. Okay, he's tired after that 40-yard run. Give him a little refresher, get Dari in there, and continue to pound the freaking rock. Your defense is tired, sure. Make them more tired. Get them banged up, bruised up, just like an old boxing match. You're not going to go headshot all the time. No, you're going to bang their bodies up. You're going to get them wheezing and gasping for air, and you're going to go sideline to sideline. And I thought the Texans in that particular instance, and this is where I really question Pep Hamilton as a play caller, is that he doesn't think like that. He's just thinking for the next, home run or big play that your quarterback hasn't shown the ability to make, or your receivers haven't shown the ability to get in open space and complement your route tree or your scheme. No, it's when you smell blood, you have to freaking go after them and make a defense work. And I just didn't. It was, to me, the offensive play calling today really hit a boiling point. I was very, very frustrated in that drive in particular.
And Pep just doesn't have these guys. This is a preparation thing, because what should be in your playbook for your team is hey, if we break something off big and it goes 40 yards down the field, this is what we're going to run next. And you could say run the ball there, but that whole secondary is chasing Dameon Pierce. You have 4 or 5 guys all chasing Dameon Pierce for 30 or 40 yards down the field. They're gassed. So, I want to go for the jugular on those type of plays. I want to go into the end zone. The defensive line's gassed. The Texans offensive line, not exactly one of the best in the NFL. I don't think they're bad, but at that point, a gas defensive line's not going to get to Davis Mills, I don't think, and a gas secondary might not be ready for a pass into the end zone from the 19-yard line. So, to me, this is just about, hey, we have to have something on our play sheet ready to go. And I got to tell the team, if this happens, this is what's going to happen. It doesn't have to be Dameon Pierce long run. It could be a long throw or whatever. But, go for the jugular. Act like you're trying to kill somebody.
That can work, but you also have to have a faster tempo offense to get up the field. After your running back runs a 40-yard gain, you move the chains. You got to be able to get up to the line, before the defense is able to make those substitutions. And then that's when you're able to catch a defense off guard, not just jogging up and taking your sweet time and figure out what the hell you're going to do. It makes your point.
Well, I mean, it's the whole, all of it connects. That's why I bring all of it up. I'm tired of talking about this because this is what every team in the NFL does, apparently, except the Texans. Everybody does this. And again, Davis Mills is not a rookie anymore. I get it. He's still a young quarterback. Pep Hamilton has been around the NFL for a long time. These guys are not new to what's going on. And this is the two of them. I'm not worried about everybody else on that field. This is about Pep preparing them for it and Davis Mills being able to handle something like that. And this should be a no-brainer. This happens in college, Shaun, all the time. It happens in high school. I've covered high school football in the Houston area, and I've covered high school football, period, for 30 years, 20 years in the Houston area. If they can do this, you can do this.
Yeah, I'm not going to disagree with you at all. I just think it is the most glaring thing here is we're expecting individuals to have guys prepared in which those individuals may not necessarily be the best fit in those roles. Pep Hamilton, particularly. I'd said before this season that, what? Davis Mills, he's been a quarterback his entire life. You were a good one in high school. You were a pretty good one in college. It's okay to not be a good starting quarterback in the NFL. This is the role that he's in. This is the situation that he has been presented with and is, seemingly grabbed it by the horns and is doing the best he possibly can. But you know what? It just might not be for you. Well, play calling just might not be for Pep Hamilton. It's okay to just be a position coach. It's okay to just be a defensive coordinator in which maybe the game has passed you by if you're Lovie Smith, never mind a head coach anymore. And I'm not saying that's necessarily the case because I do believe that from a character standpoint, an attitude standpoint, he is the right guy to have taken this team from where they've been, which is absolute hell in a handbasket last year with David Culley. But, it's hard for me to get upset or become frustrated at this point in time based on what exactly I'm seeing on the field. It's just, you want to see the things that should be coming together behind closed doors, in the meeting rooms, in the classrooms. You should see growth in your young players, and you have to be able to put them in the right scheme, the right position to be successful. And I don't think it's coming really from either side of the ball with any relative consistency, unfortunately. And it should be. It's freaking November.
Yeah, and there's more with Pep Hamilton later in this game because it's not over. And this is some of the same issues. But next Giants possession, Texans get a big sack on 3rd and 15 near midfield. So despite some longer drives, they'd only given up 7 points at this point. Texans next possession, 3rd and 5. Davis Mills trips Dameon Pierce in the backfield. So it's not just that Davis Mills can't start his own passing game. He is now tripping and purposely making Dameon Pierce. No, I'm just kidding about that. But you know what I mean? It's just come on, man. And then on the next play, it's a worthless handoff to Burkhead. Can't believe we're still doing this crap over halfway through the season. Didn't get it. Don't get it. Never will get it.
Yeah, I mean, that kind of sums it up. I mean, that's been the Texans' MO, all season long. If they're not shooting themselves in the foot, with some simple stuff on the field, like just getting guys tripped up, or even, Pierce at one point in time today, forced the Texans into a delay of game situation by lining up on the wrong side. And that kind of comes down to preparation too, because prior to that, they had all the time in the world to get set and get to the line. But it's those little things. I mean, if they're not shooting themselves in the foot individually with simple fundamental mistakes, then they're getting out coached, or out athleted, quite frankly, by opposing defense.
You speak about shooting yourselves in the foot. Texans D make a stop with less than 2 minutes, leaving Davis Mills a real chance at a meaningful 2-minute drive. But on 3rd and 4, near midfield, Laramie Tunsil jumps. Kenyon Green holds. Quesenberry makes a terrible snap. This is in 2 plays. In 2 plays, the Texans O-line, a complete meltdown, Shaun.
Yeah, it was. You mentioned a couple of those. I actually missed one in my notes. I saw the Mills fumbled snap on that 3rd and 9, sacked after a brief scramble attempt, and Green held on that play too, forced into another punt opportunity. I know you like to go through these possession by possession, and it is important, but I was going to tell you before, it's like we can almost fast forward like through the entire first half, with maybe the exception of like one drive, because everything was a freaking 3 and out, or just absolute, just comical display of offensive or lack thereof football by the Houston Texans. But yeah, I mean, that was like a microcosm of what exactly this season has been about. And there was a couple of them today with the Houston Texans offensively.
Yeah, and the thing that is really frustrating is Quesenberry is overmatched at center, and it's one thing to be overmatched at center, and he got just trucked numerous times this game. He's gotten trucked numerous times in the last few weeks. He's out of his league as a starting center in the NFL. Unfortunately, the Texans were not prepared for a Justin Britt injury. The offensive line, you've got to make them better. However, as bad as Quesenberry is at blocking, can you at least make a snap in the clutch? Can you at least snap it to your quarterback at the right spot? I mean, I don't mean to be mean to Quesenberry, but man, just do a basic thing right. And that's, I can't, how am I going to blame Lovey or Caserio or whatever? Yeah, he could give you a better center there. But Justin Britt going out after game 1 is not what any team would be prepared for. And, we always make centers, it's like a second shrift position. But, I mean, just go back to the Texans when they were really having their success on the offensive line and going to the playoffs. Seth Meyers was a huge part of that. And it looks like in the offseason, your priorities are going to be obviously quarterback and the defensive front 7. And I don't care in the first 4 rounds if they draft that, all of that. They stick to just drafting those positions in the first 4 rounds of this draft, where they've got whatever it is, 6 picks or something like that. However, you got Seth Meyers with a 6th round pick, Shaun, if you remember. You can get a center in this NFL, maybe that's somebody on somebody's back of somebody's roster, or you can in the back of the draft too.
Yeah, you're talking about Chris Myers. I think.
I mean, Chris Myers. Yeah. Seth Meyers, great late night talk show guy.
I think, Chris Myers, probably, sometimes just as funny as Seth actually was. But, the Texans, they've got the draft capital and they'll have the cash to, I think, meet quite a few of their needs this offseason, draft in particular. And, they're going to have to hit on a lot of those, certainly, and they're going to miss on some. You just hope you hit on more of your, top day 1 and 2 picks than you miss. So, I mean, based on just this last year alone, because the draft 2 seasons ago, it looks like absolute crap for Caserio, but the 2022 draft looks very promising for the foreseeable future. So I think if you're just going off of that and that alone, you should feel pretty optimistic by, the needs that Nick Caserio and the Houston Texans can meet this offseason. I will say this, in regards to Justin Britt starting the season, playing that one game in which he didn't look particularly good, even as a replacement level center in some instance, I don't really understand the criticism that he's continuing to get by, people in this town. For a guy who has not played football over the course of the last 8-9 weeks, and we really are completely in the dark, and it is unclear what kind of situation that he's dealing with, whether it be personal, whether it be family, whatever the case may be. I just have to believe that he would be much more prepared and be a guy that would solidify this offensive line that much more than that of a Scott Quessenberry or a Morrissey, who is Quessenberry's backup. And obviously, if he was remotely as good as Quessenberry, we would have seen him by now. I will say this: I'll give Quessenberry a lot of props, because from the mental side of things, the guy has prepared his butt off each and every week. Linemen, I mean, the entire offense, talks very highly of him and stepping up into this role and being prepared. However, against the Giants team that you may know going in, if you're being real with yourself, you're going to be out athleted a little bit, you're undermatched. That's what is going to happen. You're going to see some holding calls. You're going to see some false starts. You're going to see some bad snaps where a guy looks like he may have the yips because he's trying just to get that extra millisecond, of leverage back. If a guy's lined up not in a 0, but a 1 or a 2 eye, and you know what you have to do or who you have to reach. And so I fully anticipated to see these sort of things. And you just hope that the Texans, were able to overcome just the self-inflicted mistakes more times than not. And to be quite honest with you, Robert, I thought the Giants gave them every opportunity to do so. Just that interception from Mills, and I know we'll get to it, that was really the dagger. I mean, that killed them. You had multiple red zone opportunities. You settled for field goals. You couldn't make the throw that, a quarterback, I would even say on a slightly above average scale in the NFL, would make, and even those throws that they shouldn't make. And that interception to Dorsett into double coverage, after heavy pressure, was certainly one that he shouldn't have made.
Yeah, and Lawrence, let's tell people out there that this is one of the better nose guards in the NFL, and he was killing everybody that he went up against, but it was mostly Quessenberry, and I expected it, but he also got Kenyon Green. He trucked Kenyon Green too, and Kenyon Green had his issues late in this game that we're going to get to, but Davis Mills throws for 35 yards at the half and 6 possessions, if my math was right, and no passing attempts over 20 yards down the field. Kind of hard for Pierce to have any room to run. I mean, it's amazing that Pierce does what he does, considering how little they throw the ball down the field, if at all. We didn't see, Sean, either the rollouts that we saw and trying to get Davis Mills out of the pocket, where we saw him have all those success against the Eagles. I saw it maybe twice in the entire first half. And I just thought, again, where was Pep? Like, it was working last week, and there was some success by Davis Mills. And granted, he's not the future. I'm not telling you, Davis Mills is ready to make the next step, but do what your guy does well. And the Texans don't always seem to get that when they set up stuff.
That's a really good point, though, by you, because against a team that does, blitz pretty much 50% of the time, that you're going to pass the football. Why wouldn't you get Mills out on the run? And particularly, to be quite honest with you, it kind of doesn't matter if it's been to his right or left here recently, because he's looked pretty good on the run, throwing the football to either direction. He's had some success, and I think that's probably an area that we have to give him credit for, that he's improved upon. Now, I would like to see the numbers on that. The completion percentage and the attempts certainly are important, going to the right versus going to the left. But nevertheless, I think you make a good point. Against a team that's going to blitz a lot, why wouldn't you try to get him out into some space and, flood maybe the wide side of the field, give him, some short, intermediate routes to kind of go through progressions there. And if it's not there, pull it and run, avoid a sack, dump it off, something. Add that element into your offense as well. And just, it goes back to what I've been saying all season long too, Robert. Make the defense think just a little bit for a millisecond that this guy is actually a threat with his legs, which he really could be if he was put in a position to.
Early in the game, there was a play where it was a design rollout, and you saw what happened was OJ Howard blocked this guy for a second, let him loose. And maybe not been a long enough second, but he let his guy loose because he knew he was going into the pattern. And Davis Mills just missed him. He was open. He had gotten open in the flat. The play worked, except for Davis Mills got a little hurried. It was a tougher throw because now the guy's bearing down on him. It's just stuff like that where Davis Mills, if you give him enough of those opportunities, I think he's got a better shot at something like that. But let's get to the second half, because first drive, 3rd and long, the Texans do everything right. Nearly sack Daniel Jones. But Jalen Petrie not only misses an open field tackle, he whiffs on Slayton, and a 5-yard pass turns into a 54-yard touchdown. Petrie's tackling is a disaster. I'm going to start calling him Jalen Swearinger at this point.
That's pretty bad. Swearinger at least was a freaking headhunter, man. He was like overly aggressive. He just wanted to put your what in the dirt.
Well, same as Petrie. Petrie's the same. I would call that's his style.
Yeah, Petrie's aggressive. I wouldn't put him on the Swearinger level yet, but as far as like having issues with missed tackles, yeah, I mean that was as bad by far, because Petrie's in large part, yeah, he's leading the league in missed tackles and that whole bit, but he's been pretty damn good. He's probably had way many more opportunities to miss tackles than a lot of other guys too. So I'd like to see like how many tackles he's actually made versus some other safeties in the game, which I know he's actually up there towards the league lead. But yeah, that was as bad as we've seen him look on the field this season. And it was just unfortunate because all he had to do was break down, stick a helmet right in the chest, and at least just usher Slayton out of bounds. That didn't happen. And yeah, it goes for a big play. And it's those kind of plays that you can't whiff on.
But he needs to know that was a play. The guy was 5 yards short of a first down. All you have to do there is stay in front of him, wait for your defensive guys to come there. That's just, that's basically understanding some football. And Levy took him out for a little bit in the next drive, but then put him right back in the game. But, Petrie, it's not just the fact that he's got to play smarter, but, wrap up, he's got to get big. It's all of that stuff. And then the Texans, they respond surprisingly with the 7-play, 75-yard drive. Mills 4 for 4, 61 yards. Nice touchdown pass to Nico.
I had a little luck on that drive too, with the deflected pass that, Moore ended up with, before the touchdown. And that's just kind of, it's been that type of season, when you've got this level of talent that you have to work with, you're going to need a little luck and some things to go your way. And the Texans did. Mills put together, some good little stretches of drives today. Unfortunately, for a guy like him, I think, maybe you get a little frustrated, you get a little antsy in certain situations, and you try to do too much. But yes, that was a really nice drive. And I thought, I probably said this 3 times this year, the best pass that I've seen Davis Mills make. I mean, that showed, patience, that showed touch, that showed a little chemistry that we talked about starting to develop before Nico went out with the groin injury a couple of weeks ago, that we'd seen between Mills and Collins, who had started to get more targets and more catches, a couple of weeks prior to that groin injury. So I thought that was a really good drive and a really, really good throw. The best throw that I'd seen Davis Mills make all season long.
Giants come back, 12-play, 74-yard drive. Texans defense tiring in the second half. I can't blame him. This kind of happens every week. Next Texans possession, big pass to Jordan Akins. Maybe he scores if OJ Howard turns around and blocks the defender who brought down Akins. But then Sean, Dameon Pierce fumbles inside the 10. We haven't seen the fumble issue since the Bears games though. And that was not one of those situations where he's carrying the ball loosely. He just gets 2 or 3 guys jump on him at the same time. So it's hard for me to get mad.
Yeah, that look. Let me go back real quick. And sometimes you can hang on these things too much, maybe put too much into it. But that OJ Howard would have been or should have been, a block there to allow Akins to go ahead and score that touchdown. OJ Howard's a good tight end. Okay. I mean, that's proven over the last 3-4 years of his career in the NFL. But that's also the difference of being a pretty good tight end and being a really good tight end or just a player in the NFL. Like, I guarantee you, if you were to ask him, or a conversation at the very least in the locker room that he's probably having right now is, man, I just didn't want to get a flag there, for a block in the back. He didn't want to slow himself down, take a bad angle, and deter a already great play and bring that back.
All he had to do there, though, was
Sure.
get between him
You're right.
and Jordan Akins. That's
You're
it.
right. But
You
I'm
just
telling you,
you just slow down right there, and you get in front of the guy, and you just slow down. So the guys
guys can make that play that don't think. He thought, and he didn't make that play. And I'm just telling you, that's the difference between okay and really good. And there are a lot of really good football players that, whether it's a receiver or a tight end or whoever it may be, a running back, if they're in that position, they're going to freaking lay a helmet right in somebody's chest, and Akins is going to go ahead and score. That didn't happen. And the Texans aren't good enough or deep enough or sound enough to overcome, okay plays or plays that should have been made or mistakes, obviously.
Yeah,
But
I point all this stuff out, and me and Sean are pointing this out because it all adds up. I mean, it's
Yeah.
not just that Davis Mills isn't good. You can win these games if Davis Mills is just okay, and some
Yeah.
other guys make a play here and there.
Yeah, but you have a whole bunch of other guys that are just okay, or that they're not very good and they're in position in which you would expect a very good player to make them. Well, they're not a very good player. That Dameon Pierce fumble, I thought that was one of those situations where we've seen the patience that Dameon Pierce is able to run with. It looked like he was just waiting for a block to set. Either he was going to cut back inside or cut out, and that never even happened because I don't know whose guy that was. It might have been Quessenberry's guy again. Lawrence coming over and just poking that ball out from behind. I mean, there's not much you can do there because that was so bang, bang. I mean, the pressure was coming, but we know at this point in time, and Pierce knows. I mean, he just put his hands on his helmet at that point in time when the ball was being returned. Like, he knew he'd screwed up. He knew that he couldn't put the ball on the ground at that point in time when the Texans are in the red zone. As hard as it is to get to that point in this offense, but miraculously, they were there 5 times today, Robert, 5 times, and they scored 1 touchdown.
And let me just point out on Dameon Pierce, love the guy, of course, but there were times in this game when they were near the goal line where Pierce was thinking too much, and instead of just running straight ahead when he got near the goal line, where the guys up front had blocked it, and Pierce is like dancing a little bit too much in the backfield. I thought a couple different times, and the other part about it is it was just straight on head up blocking. I watched Dameon Pierce. I watched this offensive line. They're better when they move them. They get them outside their zone blocking. I don't like this straight head up blocking for both Pierce, and I don't like it for the O-line.
No, look at that. I think it was probably the longest run that Dameon Pierce had today. It was one that kind of opened up in a seam up the middle. They'd pulled Laramie Tunsil and Kenyon Green. And I think I made note of this last week with you when we did the show, or a couple of weeks ago, that, hey, where's that action been? Because the Texans showed that quite a bit in the preseason, and particularly when they decided to start playing Kenyon Green after he'd come back from his concussion. Boy, that's the one thing that we all really noticed. Man, this guy's got, as big as he is, and as mushy as he is right now, and he'll beef up a little bit, Kenyon Green will, but boy, he's got some pretty good lateral movement and can get upfield, and that's what he excels at, is run blocking. So get him out into some space, and let's move him around. That's what happened today, and the Texans saw some success with it. You've got to have the confidence, the comfortability to be able to continuously put those guys in position to help your offense. And one, give Dameon Pierce an opportunity to, not have to break 5 or 6 tackles to get, extra yardage. Give him some space, because he is a patient and smart enough runner to where he's going to let that play develop and open up.
We just talked about David Quesenberry, Sean. David Quesenberry is not going to overpower
God,
anybody.
no.
Getting that guy on the move is a huge benefit for you in any game, especially this game. But let's go to the Texans D because they force a 3-and-out. They don't quit. Good drive by Davis Mills, but then Cooks called for an illegal shift. Kenyon Green called for a holding on a Cooks touchdown. Kenyon Green did not have a good fourth quarter at all. So fourth quarter, Davis Mills then shows up right there with a terrible throw into double coverage, interception. He's got to understand. I mean, again, it's just basic football IQ. Just take the incompletion and get a field goal. You're right there. You're in this again. You're right there.
Throw it away. I mean,
Yeah.
you had the opportunity to make such a deep throw to begin with in double coverage. I mean, you understand the situation, throw it away. It could have been one of those things, and again, some quarterbacks will see it, some quarterbacks just won't. They're thinking about getting hit. He's probably one of those that is thinking about getting a hit. Let me just get this ball off. And maybe he didn't see that safety coming over, but should have. He was in the picture. I mean, Dorsett was pretty much double covered for about the last 10 yards of that route. So he should have seen it. But you have to throw that football away. And that's kind of the point that I made earlier. It's like, there's quarterbacks that are going to understand when and when not to make certain throws. And as beautiful as a throw that was to Nico Collins earlier in the game, it was just a horrible decision. Again, and we've seen them really over the course of the last 4 weeks where Mills has really struggled with taking care of the football. This is now the third, fourth, fifth interception over the course of the last 4 weeks. And I think the fourth straight week that he's thrown an interception in a football game. You could excuse some of the ones earlier in the season away. Okay, the batted balls, the 2-1 game. I think that was like week 2 or week 3. But I mean, come on, man. Let's not go all Brock Osweiler on everybody now. Like every interception has a story crap. No, every interception doesn't need a story. The ball just simply doesn't need to be fit into such a tight window. You've got to be able to understand when and when not to throw the football and what the situation is, when you cannot stand to take a sack, when you cannot stand to try to make an irresponsible throw.
The Texans don't quit, and I'll give Lovey's team credit here because the defense gets them the ball back. Mills gets them to field goal range. It actually could have been a touchdown because there was a pass interference in the end zone. But O.J. Howard, not a good game for him because I picked 2 big plays. He gets called for a holding penalty. Penalties offset. They would have had first down at the 1-yard line. So the Texans kept imploding after the Fairbairn field goal. The special teams somehow with 2 penalties on an onside kick that Sean, I don't even think it was necessary. They had 2 timeouts and the 2-minute warning. It's a Hail Mary when you're doing an onside kick. And I get it. They hadn't stopped the Giants much all day, but they had stopped them at times in this game on 3-and-outs. And how about just give it a shot? Give it a shot. You got a much better shot at doing that than you do that onside kick, in my opinion.
It's an interesting situation, right? And in that particular moment, I think, the call from Lovie Smith was, well, let's just roll the dice and see what happens, right? Frank, you feel good about it? Yeah, I feel good about it. We can do it. Okay, fine. Let's go. If you're going to roll the dice in that particular situation, I think I almost would have much rather seen him roll the dice on the 4th and 8 instead of kick a damn field goal. Like, let's go try to get a first down because even if you miss it, you still have 2 timeouts and the 2-minute warning. And you're pinning them deep in their own territory.
But you're down 2 scores there, Sean. You're down
fine.
2 scores.
Guess what? You still need to get an onside kick. If you decided to do it in that instance or not, you'd still needed something else to go right for you. My point is it made perfect football sense to go ahead and kick that field goal. You're down 8 in that situation. You're in the most favorable situation in which you still need something to go right if in fact you choose to gamble there, and they did with the onside kick. They very well could have, for the second straight defensive drive, held the Giants, but obviously they weren't comfortable with that. And they said, hey, we're just going to roll the dice and see what happens. And I just thought that if it was a gun to my head, I'm still taking my chance on the defense because the Giants, to be quite honest with you, like, yeah, they were really good at running the football. And yeah, Dan Jones is really good at making plays with his legs, whether it be out of an obvious passing situation or, a play action, a short run. Like, they still didn't impose their will on you really today at all. I felt like they left a lot to be desired as an offense, really, as they have all season long. And miraculously, they wind up at 7-2. But I just thought that the Texans should have just went ahead and kicked it off and tried to get that defensive stop on their side of the 50, much less than taking their chances on theirs.
All right. Pep angers me in so many different ways, but this
Cheers,
one was
yeah.
just absolutely ridiculous. The Texans go down the field at the end of the game. There is like 40 seconds left to go on the clock, and they're in field goal range. So, like, once you get into field goal range, you don't have timeouts. I have no issue with quickly bringing the field goal team out there. But when you make the long first down to get you there, this is really simple. This is like third grade stuff. Sean, your 2-year-old could figure this out. Davis Mills, throw the ball into the ground once and then bring the field goal team, not rush them out on the field. And I get it. There's a chance in a gazillion that you still get the onside kick and some Hail Mary crazy touchdown. But we've seen crazier things happen. But just giving yourself a chance. And it's not about this particular game. It's about the IQ of this offensive coordinator, the IQ of this quarterback, the IQ of this entire team.
Say it. The head coach too, because everything goes through Lovie Smith's headset. He gives the okay to everything. He's said that numerous times this year. He makes the call. He makes the final decision. So it's on him too. I mean, if we're going to give this guy credit enough for, being around the NFL for 20 some odd, nearly 30 years, in various roles, then he should know better. And if you're really trying to teach your team how to finish games, then play to the final whistle. Like, you go for broke. You did on the damn onside kick moments prior to that, and it didn't work out. So, let's see what you got. Keep firing. And at this point in time, it's the smoke and mirrors. They're firing blanks, and they're going to tell us that, hey, we can't have missed tackles. We can't have turnovers. No, you're right. You can't, but you also can't make such egregious coaching mistakes as well. And it's not like I'm expecting them to not admit their own mistakes. However, you have to speak of it as like all encompassing, because you can't talk one day out of one side of your mouth and say, hey, we're trying to teach these guys, what it is to play in the NFL and how to win football games and create this culture. Well, there's a lot of problems with that, because when I ask you specifically, what is the culture of this football team? And you tell me that we're beyond that, there is no culture of this football team. We're just trying to, finish games. That's what kind of non-answered garbage is that? And that's exactly what I got this week. So, I've grown frustrated with what sort of message they've conveyed to the media and to the public and to the fans, with this, we got to finish crap. But then when you answer every question as if it is a loaded one and refuse to give a real answer about nothing that is malicious at all, but quite simply just about the culture that you clearly were brought in to repair, and you can't answer that question, that's what bothers me. And I think that's going to wear itself real thin very quickly.
I like Lovey, but at this point, I wouldn't be opposed to bringing somebody else in. And I don't know if anybody else.
You're not going to bring anybody in. They're just going to let this continue to smolder and be the dumpster fire that it is. Like, if you fired Lovey, who's taking over? Pep?
No. I'm talking about at the end of the season. And because here's the deal. Okay, let me just lay it out for you, Sean. You can say whatever you want to say about Caserio. I believe that whole coaching disaster and the way Lovey was hired at the end of last year, or the beginning of this calendar year, I should say, do I believe that was all Caserio? Do I believe Jack Easterby didn't have his fingerprints all into what was going on with that circus. Jack Easterby is now gone. This is Casario's team. Casario is a lot of things, but he is not somebody that likes losing. He is a hate to lose guy. He works his butt off. I don't think Lovey is necessarily his guy. I felt like that guy was somebody that was a Cal McNair guy, maybe a Jack Easterby guy. So could you get out of the Lovey thing and go, okay, yeah, it's the third coach you're getting rid of in 3 years, but Casario can just, slough it off as, hey, a couple of those guys were not me. It wasn't me that hired those guys. And, Cully was obviously a hire to be fired guy anyway. But when you look at that situation, you could get out of it. As somebody pointed out to me on Twitter this week, you could potentially get out of it by saying, all right, Lovey, we're going to move you up into a Romeo Crennel consulting position. So it doesn't look like you're getting rid of this guy after a year. You just say, hey, we're going to move you up into, this another position within the organization that's a high position, and bring somebody else in. And, if you're asking me who I would like to bring in my dream scenario, the guy that I want, and I don't know what the relationship is with him and the Texans at this point, but it's D'Amico Ryans, who's somebody that has been here. The fans respect, the fans love. He's an incredible leader. He brings in gravitas with him already. He's somebody, unlike the last two hires, that's looked on as a future star in the NFL and somebody that can really do something. So that's my guy right now if I'm going to do it. And I think you could get out of this gracefully if you're smart. And we'll see how smart Casario is. And, if he wants to stick with Lovey, though, Pep Hamilton's got to go, obviously.
I don't hate that. I don't hate any of what you just laid out. And I agree with both of those scenarios being really likely to happen in regards of moving on from Lovie Smith, taking an advisory role on, consulting role, whatever you want to call it, or just outright moving on from him, which I would kind of be in favor of because, you still have a guy in a building who to some degree is influencing others in that building. And not to say that Lovey is a poor influence, but because he's highly respected and the players do like playing for him. Laramie Tunsil spoke very highly of him, and has all season long. So I think what is likely, what will happen, forget likely, what will happen is the Texans, however they finish this season, doesn't really matter. It's going to end up becoming a top pick anyway, whether you win 1 to 4 games. And I'd be surprised if it was closer to 4 than just 2. But at this point in time, they'll move on from him. And Casario won't even have to explain it. Like, he's spoken twice since the football season started in 2022, and not even after the trade deadline. The next time you hear from Nick Casario is probably going to be at the end of the season. I think he's only obligated to speak to the media twice, according to Pro Football Writers. So, I'm waiting until week 18 or 19 finishes, whatever the case is, before we hear from him again. He's not going to have to really do any excusing, because what the Texans do, how they operate is they just, you can talk amongst yourselves.
But Shaun, how it would look if you go ahead and fire your third African-American coach in 3 seasons. And I know Romeo didn't start the year, but this is about the look in the NFL if those guys only get a year to prove themselves on a team that is totally devoid of talent.
You're also one of the few organizations, maybe, I don't know, I have to say few. It could be the only one. How many organizations have had 3 black head coaches?
Yeah, I'm just telling you what the monologue would be nationally. What the monologue would be is the tech. Look, they
don't care.
They gave them a chance, but this is not a real chance. This is not real chance.
They don't care, Robert. You could be right, but you're not going to fix anything with words at this point anyway. You're going to fix it with action. You're going to fix it with winning. And going forward, it really kind of doesn't matter who you do it with. You just have to win, to be quite honest with you, because they'd have already been the laughing stock, and that's still not over. Thanks Bill O'Brien, thanks Jack Easterby, thanks Cal McNair.
But they did end up caring last year, because if they didn't, we know good and well McCown would be the head coach right now. So somebody in that building cares about their public perception, and somebody cared enough to finally get Jack Easterby out of the building. There are perception things with this team that they actually care about right now.
I don't know. I mean, and I'm just speculating here because I don't know one way or the other, but was it more public perception in why you don't go hire Josh McCown? Or was that maybe the impetus for Nick Caserio being able to eat closer and closer to being able to stand up on the table and have Cal McNair listen to him rather than Jack Easterby? Something obviously happened to cause a chasm between Jack Easterby and Cal McNair, who were like this. And to have that parting of the ways, they called it a mutual parting of ways. It wasn't mutual. Something happened. Something was said. It was built up over time. One of those occurrences happened where Cal was comfortable enough with letting Nick move on without Easterby in the building. This is something that we probably won't ever have the answer to, but I will just say this, going back to the McCown thing, is it public perception, or was it more or less the NFL saying, hey, here's this situation with Brian Flores. One, you guys are more than welcome to do what you will with, McCown and making him your head coach. However, you're already seeing a bleep storm right now. So do you really want to do that? Or would you like to go this direction?
And that's the same thing the NFL is going to tell them if they decide that they're going to fire Lovie Smith. If they start hearing those rumors, it's the same thing. So. And Cal McNair is not a strong backbone guy. If the NFL tells him something, he's going to back down. We know Cal McNair by now.
Yeah, but why would the NFL say anything? I mean, just look at the Rooney Rule and how goofy and cockamamie it is to begin with. The fact that you even have a rule where you have to interview at least one or two minorities before you make a coaching hire, that exists. The Texans are going to be able to stand on a stool that nobody else in the NFL could stand on and say that, hey, we've gone through 3 African-American head coaches in our organization's history.
3 martyrs.
And that's fine. It's still 3. It's potato at this point in time, because to me, you can't argue that point against something so silly as having a Rooney Rule in place anyway. You already don't trust your people to make the best decision for the people in the building. So the Texans can say that, hey, look, we've given 3 guys a shot, and not just a shot. Hell, Romeo Crennel was here for how many years as defensive coordinator and in an advisory role? Lovie Smith was here as a defensive coordinator, and we made him a head coach. David Culley was somebody that, we were forced into, but highly respected around the entire league, for 20, 30 years, whatever it is. Like, we've been there, done that. Now we're going to go get our guy and hire the best possible person for it. If it's D'Amico, great. If it's, whoever.
Well, that's why I say D'Amico is like your better option, because you're sticking with another African-American coach. That's anyway.
I don't think they have to.
I'm going to try to end with a good note, because I know people are like probably ready to go. They've got to be close to ready to go on the Texans. But
it's more interesting than talking about the game. I'll tell you that.
It's the game, but it's just, I'm trying to end on a good note. Christian Harris. Is that a good note to end on? Isn't he a good note? 9 tackles, 4 solo.
Yeah.
Is he showing you anything?
Yeah. I asked Lovie Smith earlier this week, he's played 3 games. This will be his 4th, since assuming this starting role with the absence of Kamu Grugier-Hill. What are you expecting to see out of him? Like, what is he supposed to be getting better at this point in time, based on your experience as a teacher? And I couldn't get an answer out of him. What I was hoping he would say was some things that I thought I'd saw today was better fits, better tackling, and just a better nose for run or pass, being comfortable in the space that he's playing, not being so, I guess, caught off guard looking, right? And so I thought I saw that from Christian Harris today. I'm all about Christian Harris. Like, I think if it takes, 2 years, I think it's very possible we're talking about that guy and I know it seems like a very long ways away now because the defense is the weakest point on this team. But I think we could be talking about Christian Harris as probably the biggest success story coming from the 2022 draft. I think he could be that impactful in a good, better coached, and more talent rich defense. Dameon Pierce is good, and he will be very good for a long time if he stays healthy. But Christian Harris, I think, could be a freaking disruptor. And people are going to be saying his name a lot on Sundays. I think if he's able to stay healthy going forward.
Yeah, Christian Harris showed me something. At least he was tackling guys, and he's a linebacker, and that's good to see. And I was happy about that. And you just want to see some progress from somebody like Christian Harris. And, with every single week, I've seen him get a little bit better, and that's great. Like Jalen Petrie, I talked about him in this game is he's slipping a little bit as the year goes along, where Christian Harris, we're seeing the progress week in and week out. It's like we saw with Dameon Pierce from the beginning of the season. And as he got more playing time and as he got more chances, we saw the progress with him. Kenyon Green, it's been up and down. It's been up and down a little bit with him, but for an offensive lineman, it can be up and down. I mean, that's the way it's going to be. And you're going to face tougher guys one week than you do the next week, and so on and so forth. But
his mentor, Laramie Tunsil, has drawn a couple of flags in consecutive weeks. I mean, the best of the best are going to make mistakes, and the best of the newest are going to make mistakes as well. Kenyon Green's going to experience some growing pains, and I think Jalen Petrie and even Derek Stingley. Early on this season, Stingley was getting picked on a little bit. They wanted to see what the rookie had, and he'd given up a lot of catches, a lot of yards and stuff like that. And, it's kind of seemingly, settled down, become a better tackler, become a better fit in the run game. But, look, he's going to get stronger. Petrie's going to get stronger going forward. But I mean, heck, Robert, they're 1-7-1 now. You're 9 games in. You've got 8 games this regular season remaining. I don't know who's on the schedule. I'd have to go look in terms of like what they're doing through the air and the success that their quarterbacks are having against secondaries. But I would not be surprised at all for us to be talking about like, oof, man, look at Stingley. Oof, man, Petrie, what's going on with him? You could dumb it down and generalize it and call it a rookie wall. They're going to be picked on. They're going to make mistakes, but are they going to be learning from those mistakes? Petrie was pissed when he came out of the game today after whiffing on that tackle and having Slayton go 54 yards. That was embarrassing for him. That was maddening for him. And I think it was probably just as much about like, hey, holding him out, letting him regain composure before sending him back out on the football field and, compounding that mistake with another one. So I think he's smart enough. I think the Texans and Lovie Smith, trust him enough to continue to work hard and improve. And I think the same thing for Derek Stingley, which, to be quite honest with you, I feel like we've already seen, a pretty good jump in progress from him from his early season struggles, whether it be in this coverage or just particularly missing tackles himself, which I feel like he's gotten really good at. But he'll get better at because both of these guys are going to put on muscle. They're going to get stronger too.
The secondary upcoming has Deshaun Watson, Patrick Mahomes, Dak Prescott. They got some quarterbacks coming up that they're going to be facing. So we'll see how they're looking after all of that. Me and Sean will be back in the middle of the week to do our regular show. Subscribe if you have not done it to this point. We do a show every single week along with the post game through the Texans season. And I will have my regular Rockets guest, Frank from HTX Chop Shop. We'll talk fantasy and everything going on around the NFL with Andy Rio in the middle of this week as well. So keep an eye out for all of that going on. We're going to also talk about the Astros. We haven't forgot about them. There's some good stories in the last few days that me and Sean have to get into. I am chomping at the bit to get into some stuff that's been going on with the Astros over the last few days, like a certain general manager. But anyway, we will catch up with everybody real soon. Again, thanks for coming on with us. We want to hear from you. Let us know what you think, how you feel about us, and how you feel about the show and what some of our opinions are. Love to hear from everybody out there. Until next time, until next Texans game for sure. We'll see you guys later.
listening to Houston Sports Talk.
Hey, you can support the show by subscribing on YouTube and commenting on the videos. Listen to Houston Sports Talk on Spotify, Apple, Stitcher, and Google. Don't forget to tell a friend and share our show on social media. Spread the word, everybody. Thanks for listening.